Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville, Monday, July 8th, 2024. We have regrets from Councilors Shi and Longo, and I would like to add to my welcome to this meeting a reminder to everyone in person in our chamber today that decorum is essential to our work in order to ensure a peaceful and respectful environment for all who are participating. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, none are showing. Would someone like to move and second resolving in the committee of the whole? Councilor McNeese and Councilor Dudek, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you both. Consent items before us, we have two. A notice of intention to demolish at 324 Spruce Street and a recommendation report for the draft plan of condominium at 2170 Postmaster Drive. We have staff available if you have questions, and I'll first see if I have a motion. Councilor Elger moves the consent items. Is there any objection? There being none, that carries. Congratulations, and thank you, Councilor. Now, we have two public hearing items, and these are very important stages in the processing of applications to develop land. This is where we build the issues list for staff to go away and consider before they bring back a recommendation report at a later date. And if you, while you're watching, would like to join the meeting to share your suggestions for issues that should be assessed on these two reports, you should call 905-815-6095. You'll be connected to the meeting after any registered delegations. The first item is the public meeting report and official plan amendment for Credit Mills Development Group. And we have a delegation in the form of Melinda McWorry from MHBC Planning on behalf of the applicant. And as I understand it, Ms. McRory, you have a presentation, and we look forward to your information.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of committee, and the public. My name is Melinda McCrory, and I am an associate and planner at MHBC Planning, here tonight on behalf of our client, Credit Mills Development Corporation, for the proposed residential development at 1295 6th Line. I'm also here tonight with Dana Anderson, partner and planner with MHBC, to assist with answering any questions as needed as well. Next slide. The subject lands are located on 6th Line and are currently occupied by a single detached dwelling. The site has an approximate area of 0.38 hectares. It's relatively flat with tree and vegetative coverage around the perimeter of the site. Immediately north of the site is a landscaped area and trail associated with the White Oaks Secondary School. Further north is a variety store and associated parking, as well as single detached dwellings. Immediately abutting the subject land to the south is a 7-story apartment building and associated parking, as shown here. Townhouses are located to the southeast, fronting Red Bank Crescent as well. Immediately east of the site is a landscaped open area associated with the White Oaks Secondary School, and low-rise residential to the east of the subject lands as well, just south of the school lands. To the west is low-rise residential located across 6th Line. Next slide. The site is located in close proximity to a number of community services, parks, and amenities, as shown here. As mentioned, there's a variety store to the immediate north. There's various educational institutions within close proximity to the site, various parks, places of worship, and community services. Next slide. The conceptual site plan is shown here, and it's been prepared for the purposes of the official plan amendment application, with a future zoning bylaw amendment application to follow. A 6-story building is proposed on the site that has a gross floor area of 6,160 square meters. There's a total of 70 residential units proposed, including 42 one-bedroom units, 24 two-bedroom units, and 4 three-bedroom units. The proposed density is 184 units per hectare. Access to the proposed development is via 6th line. A dedicated pickup and drop-off space is proposed. There is a loading area and space for garbage collection as well that is screened to the south, as well as a rear parking area where access to the underground parking is provided with one level of underground parking proposed. There are 80 parking spaces proposed as part of the development, as well as 70 bicycle parking spaces, 52 for residents and 18 for visitors. 28% of the site is maintained as landscape area. As noted, the site plan is currently shown as conceptual and will be further refined through a future zoning bylaw amendment process, which will also include a public meeting. The main purpose of the application is to facilitate the land use change from low-density residential to high-density residential through the official plan amendment. We have received comments from staff so far, and some of them relate to the zoning bylaw amendment, so we will use those comments to further refine the zoning bylaw amendment application in the future. Next slide. In terms of the policy and regulatory context, the Region of Halton official plan designates the subject lands as urban area on Map 1 regional structure. The Livable Oakville plan designates the subject lands as low-density residential on Schedule I central land use. Low-density residential permits a range of low-density housing types, including detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and duplexes, up to 29 dwelling units per hectare. The proposed official plan amendment seeks to redesignate the subject lands from low-density residential to high-density residential, as previously noted, which would permit high-density housing types, including multiple attached dwellings, apartments, retirement homes, and long-term care homes, up to 185 units per hectare. Next slide. The site is zoned within the town's current zoning bylaw as residential low, RL3-0, and a future zoning bylaw amendment application will be required. Next slide. A detailed planning justification report was submitted with the application. The proposed development represents an opportunity for infill development on a large site well suited for intensification. The proposed development has been designed to ensure appropriate integration and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. In terms of height, it proposes 6 stories adjacent to a 7-story apartment building to the immediate south of the site, which is already designated as high-density residential. The proposed height in this regard is compatible and provides a consistent built form in terms of height along 6th line. In terms of scale and massing, the proposed development has been strategically sited on the site to ensure the majority of built form and massing is located in close proximity to 6th line to provide appropriate setbacks and stepbacks in the built form to ensure height transition and buffering to the neighboring uses and to minimize the potential for any shadow impacts. The proposed development will provide landscaping and tree preservation where possible to ensure buffering of the proposed drive aisle and parking from the existing residential to the south. And the proposal is pedestrian-oriented and supports active transportation and transit use in the area by providing convenient access to transit and bicycle parking. Next slide. The proposal contributes to climate change and resiliency efforts for the town of Oakville through consideration of sustainability. It's designed with a compact built form, aims to intensify an underutilized site, fostering energy conservation. It is pedestrian-oriented. It has convenient access to an existing bus route through the bus stop located at the southwest corner of the site. And it recognizes the significance of walking and cycling as alternative modes of transportation by including bicycle parking to serve residents and visitors as well. And an effort will be made to favor native plant species to ensure longevity and overall success of landscape design as part of the future zoning bylaw amendment application. Next slide. In terms of public engagement to date, a public information meeting was hosted on May 11th of 2023. A PowerPoint presentation was provided at the time, sharing information on just different aspects of the proposal. Various questions were received and have been summarized on the screen here, including a question regarding garbage collection, pickup, and waste, So there is a private refuse room with screening as shown previously on the conceptual site plan. There was a question regarding setback of the building from adjacent residential. So currently the building is proposed conceptually to be set back 27 meters to the east and approximately 15 meters to the south. Question regarding noise minimization for the semi-detached houses on Red Bank Crescent. The separation distance provided will assist with that, as well as landscaping and fencing to be further explored through the zoning process. There was a question regarding increase of traffic, and our traffic impact brief prepared as part of the application found that the proposed development generates 25 two-way vehicle trips during weekday AM and PM hours and not resulting in a significant impact to the surrounding network. There was a question regarding shadow impacts, and the massing of the proposed building has been strategically set back and stepped back, as mentioned, to minimize any potential shadowing on the surrounding streets, and this is compliant with the shadow study guidelines of the town of Oakville. And then there was various other questions regarding the timeline for construction, brightness of lights, balconies, solar panels, and electric car chargers. And all of these detailed design elements will be reviewed in greater detail at the zoning stage. Next slide. In conclusion, the proposed development and proposed official plan amendment provide for an appropriate development of the subject lands given the existing and planned surrounding context. They are consistent and conform to the relevant provincial policies and legislation, including having regard for matters of provincial interest under the Planning Act, provincial policy statement, and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. They conform to the Region of Halton official plan, the Livable Oakville plan, and promote the efficient use of land and optimize existing and planned infrastructure. And they help to contribute to creating a complete community. The proposal is compatible and will not create any adverse impacts on the existing or planned surrounding community. And therefore, in our opinion, the proposed development is appropriate for the subject lands, represents good planning, and is in the public interest. Next slide. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. Let's see how many you've generated. I'm going to look to Ward 5 first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one pre-delegation question. That is, has there been a determination made whether it's going to be rental or condominium?
Through the mayor to the councillor, there has not been that determination yet. Okay. It's still being considered by our client, and our client wants to maintain their options as they proceed to the zoning stage.
Okay, and other question, I'm sorry I said one question, I actually have a second one. You've had conversations, I assume, with the school board up to this point?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we did receive comments from the school board as part of the submission circulation. We're still going through those with our team. We haven't had a chance to connect with them yet, but we do have detailed comments from the school board.
Do you have any preview of any of the concerns that they may have expressed, or have they expressed a concern?
Through the mayor to the councillor, they have provided us some comments related to the requesting an arborist report for information on the existing trees and any proposed removals. So that is something that an arborist report wasn't requested as part of the official plan amendment application, but we'll certainly look to provide that to them and review that with them as part of the future process.
I think that would be a great plan. Thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. I have two questions for you. The first one is a bicycle space issue. Given the number of rooms that would be proposed with what you've put forward, it looks to me like there are fewer bicycle parking spaces than you've got units and or certainly rooms. It's almost like half. Is there an opportunity to change that to provide additional bicycle parking?
Through the mayor to the councillor, there definitely is an opportunity to explore that further. The actual bicycle parking will be secured through the zoning bylaw amendment process, but what we're showing is conceptual on our site plan now, but we can certainly take that back with our team.
So I get that it's second stage perhaps, but
yeah.
I'll flag that as an issue. The other issue I have for you is with respect to the architectural detail, which I get is not exactly a issue perhaps for today, it's an issue perhaps for tomorrow, but given the prominence of the location with respect to the entryway into the high school and the library area, have you given consideration for, and would you give better consideration for the architectural detail of the frontage on the street and through the walkway area?
Through the mayor to the councillor, certainly we will. We did receive some comments from urban design in that regard as well as part of our first submission and focusing on the design of the frontage of the building. So we will certainly look into that with our team as well.
Okay, thanks. I'll leave those as issues for our staff as well.
Thank you. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Thanks very much for coming. Can you go back to parking spaces? There's 70 units, and how many parking spaces are there for the residents?
Through the mayor to the councillor, there's 80 parking spaces
80
currently
parking
proposed.
spaces
That's correct.
for the 70 units. And how many are for visitor?
Sorry, through the mayor to the councillor, breakdown. Is 19 visitor.
So 19 visitor. And did you say there's, and how many for the residents then?
51.
So 51 for the residents and 19 for the visitor. So there's 70 units, but you're saying quite a few people won't have a car. It's not a seniors residence though, is it, your building here?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's not decided yet at this time. I know our client is considering a senior residence as an option, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. They want to, as noted, explore their options and come to that determination through the zoning process.
Okay, I think that's still I'm glad to hear that's still an outstanding issue, because with 70 residential units, and I think you said 52 are one bedroom, 18 are two, and 4, I think were 3. So I think most people might have a car there. I don't think they're all on bicycles yet. Tree preservation, your wording was pretty good. You said tree preservation where possible. Where isn't it possible?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we had a preliminary arborist report done, but it wasn't requested as part of the official plan amendment application. Staff have commented on asking to see it now as part of their first submission comments. I can't be certain at this moment on where it's feasible and where it's not, because it hasn't been finalized and submitted to the town for review yet.
Okay. So normally, do people ask for a tree preservation or an arborist report when they ask for an official plan amendment? Is that normal?
Through the mayor to the councillor, in this instance, it wasn't requested. It was requested as part of the future zoning process. So that is why it wasn't submitted.
Okay, yeah, that's good information for us sitting here too going forward. Appreciate that a lot. Two-way traffic, only 25 vehicles for AM peak. What is AM peak? How many hours is AM peak?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that is morning rush hour. So I believe it's classified between 7 and 9 a.m., but I can't be certain because it's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, well, the only reason I ask is I'm trying to figure out right now when it isn't rush hour anymore. So, yeah, and if maybe you can come back with the answer on that from the traffic expert. So, and thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I trust that staff are keeping track of the issues being raised by council. And as I indicated at the start, the point of this meeting is identify issues to be added to the staff list for evaluation of the application. Councillor Hazlitt-Deal.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Was there a formal traffic study done for this, or was this just a at their table analysis? If we add X number of people or units, we anticipate the following?
Through the mayor to the councillor, what was requested of us was a traffic impact brief. And my understanding, not being a traffic expert, is that any proposed development that generates less than 100 trips is where a traffic impact brief is requested, and that was what was requested of us. So it's a high-level traffic analysis that does a summary of trip generation and does an assessment of the surrounding network, including a review of parking and bicycle parking.
Okay, thanks very much. My other questions are for staff. Mayor Burton, should I proceed?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. I'm wondering, in a pre-consultation, was there any discussion with staff about medium density versus high density?
Through the mayor to, or the chair to the councillor, I don't believe that there was. The proposal at the formal consultation stage was for going from low-density residential to high-density residential.
And if it was to be medium density, what would be the upper limit?
I will check on that. I'll have to get back to you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Councillor, should staff and I conclude that what you'd like to see is added to the issue list, is high density appropriate, or would a different zoning category or official plan designation, I beg my pardon, be more appropriate?
I'm trying to get to the bottom of, was there any other consideration other than high density, given the number you're proposing isn't even at the max of what high density could be on a major arterial, or what feels like a major arterial to that neighborhood. My other comment is just around, in the issues list, we often talk generally about complete communities, but under the issues list, we don't seem to answer that. What are the issues that arise in order to achieve this as a complete community? And I would ask that be commented on when you come back. What elements is supportive of a complete community and what elements are missing as there's consideration of the application.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question with respect to the unit types, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. The conclusion of those numbers, based on your data information to come up with those units, numbers of units. For example, 1 bedroom 42, 2 bedroom 24, and 3 bedroom 4. How did you arrive at that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think it's mostly based on the built form, the existing footprint that we had. As you can see through the architectural conceptual site plan shown, it is a very long and narrow building. So the opportunities for the mix of unit typologies is a little more limited on this site. So in terms of how it was derived at, you'll see that the 3-bedroom units are mostly located at the front of the building, fronting 6th line, because that's the opportunity where there's a bit more width. And then the remainder of the units are the 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom unit along the corridor within the building.
Thank you for that. I guess where I'm coming from is that we deal with affordable housing. We're dealing with family units and so forth. We don't have enough of those. Everything seems to be 1 bedroom, and the reality of it, we're by a high school and another school. Is there any consideration of looking at those unit types and maybe put a more 2 bedrooms, maybe a couple more 3 bedrooms for families who are starting out, because it's very difficult for young families to find anything that's affordable, and this might be something that you could consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. The top floor, what is the planned use at this stage? I saw it was glass, I believe, along the upper edge. Is that going to be like amenity space or something of that nature?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it's currently shown in our floor plan drawings as units, the 6th floor.
Okay. The reason I'm raising that is Councillor Chisholm and I have had a few problems with some of the newer buildings and the lighting associated at the very top. And some of them tend to leave them on 24/7. And so I would just ask that maybe staff deal with that through the process. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, and sorry, I apologize, it might be to staff. I'm just wondering if staff can report back on how this development impacts our obligation for our 33,000 houses over 10 years and what that implication is, and where this takes us with regard to the intensification elements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, Ms. McPhail, thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. McRory, thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations?
Michael Gradowski.
Mr. McGraski, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. It's Michael Grabowski with a B. So I live in 1298 6th Line with my girlfriend there. This property is being built directly across the street from us. One thing that I don't see mentioned is that this property is built not very far from a stop sign where there is major traffic congestion, and this is going to increase the traffic congestion.
Could you assist me, sir, by addressing the microphone a little better?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to lean down, but you sort of have to be in front of it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so this property is being built very close to the stop sign, which is directly right across the parking lot of this new property is going to go directly right across from our house. One thing I would question, which one of the councilors already brought up, is that they said there's 25 cars in the AM during rush hour with 70 units there. There is another medium density building there, and if you drive down the street, you will see that they're parking on the grass in front of the building because there's not enough parking spots. This is going to be the same issue that's going to happen with this building because they're already not planning for enough parking spots. Second thing that I haven't seen mentioned is 6th Line up and down here is a very big commute for bicycle riders. There's a lot of bicycle riders up and down the street, and this is going to introduce new cars, which is going to make it unsafe. Another thing I'd like to see addressed is what about all the noise during construction, the extra possible damage to people's homes right across the street from this construction, the dirt, the dust, and not to mention that that is also going to impact the school right across from the construction. And we do have kids going to these schools as well. There's going to be possibly 100 people living across the street. Is this going to make this area a lot less safe now? These are all concerns we have about this new development right now, and I don't see during the presentation that any of them were addressed.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for adding those issues to the list that staff are maintaining through this meeting. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
I'm sorry, I can't read the handwriting very well. Is it Arthur? Yes, it is. Okay.
Arthur, welcome. We look forward to learning how to say your last name and hearing your information.
Mr. Cormier. It's Arthur Cormier.
Cormier.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I live directly behind the property, 1272 Red Bank. I back right onto that property. My neighbor also does. And we have some major concerns about this. First of all, the garbage that they're talking about, it'll be behind us, right behind us. If you know anything about these garbage containers, they give off a smell. I know that for 100% fact. I worked at Hopedale Mall. I was a property management there. The Metro there, that container that's fully contained on the hot summer days that we're having right now, you could smell that through up 3rd Line all the way into all those townhouses. It's been like that for years. It's there now. They couldn't change it. They still can't change it. So that is going to be there. There's no way to change that. That's one of the concerns we have. Now we're going to have a parking lot there with trucks coming in to do deliveries, whatnot, cars parking. And I did listen to some of the things that they were saying about the traffic, only 25%. That is not going to be true whatsoever, because as the gentleman here had said, that stop sign out there, there's a stop sign for the kids to get on the bus, which we have now, free bus rides for the kids to get help with the traffic. At morning and evening, you can't make a left turn off of Sewell because the traffic is so thick. If somebody is out there making a left-hand turn, you can be 10 minutes to make a right-hand turn off of Sewell. That's how bad the traffic is there now. So it's not going to get better with this whatsoever. There was some other issues. With these garbage dumps, there's going to be a lot more wildlife. We have a lot of wildlife around there. And so they're, as it is right now, they're into everything. They're carrying diseases. My daughter's at RVT. She's out doing rabies collections right now, matter of fact. And you're just gathering more of these animals in a school zone, in a school property. So these are other concerns that I have. The issue of the sunlight, we're going to be affected by that in the evenings. Right now, we can all sit out there. It's quite the family-orientated neighborhood, all down through that whole back. Everybody gets out there. They're out there at nighttime with their families, barbecuing and whatnot. So with the smells, it's going to be darker. We're going to have less air coming through our properties, for sure. It's going to be blocking off the air. A 6-story, I think, is totally ridiculous. So do most of my neighbors that I have talked to. They all have said the same thing. Not opposed to building something that people will live in, but a 6-story building there, it's not going to be helping students. There's no way in the world the students will be able to go in there. So it's not going to be for families, 1-bedrooms, as we said, right? Townhouses, but a 6-story, I just don't see how that's going to benefit that area.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for bringing your concerns. Madam Clerk, are there more?
Jeremy Hammond?
I gather, Mr. Hammond, they spoke for you well enough. Is that the? Okay. Council, I see more hands. We have Councillor Knoll and then Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to get some clarification, perhaps from the applicant, on that last question, just to maybe get that one checked off the list right now. And that is, and this again is to the planning consultant, if we can recall them for a second.
Ms. McRoy, you have questions, or at least one.
So you heard during the last delegation that the gentleman on Red Bank is concerned about garbage. That was raised, I believe, at one of the public information sessions that we attended. And I believe the response was, and I just would like you to confirm this and maybe give some more detail, that the garbage is stored internally?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, there is a private refuse room. It's stored internally to the building. Right. And there is a screening wall proposed where the loading area will be as well. So it'll be visually screened and also internally located within the building.
So the only time that the garbage is exposed to the outside is, I guess, superintendents will bring it out at the time of garbage pickup?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's correct.
Okay. You heard the questions about the number of parking spaces and the concerns about parking. Now, I do note for my colleague that there is say, a relatively comprehensive transportation analysis that's part of the plan. It's not with the today. It's not appended to today's application. It's on the website. But I am also very curious about your calculations for 24 trips in the evening. Is it? I don't. This is the number one concern that we're hearing from our constituency. And this will be on the question list, of course, to come back. But I wonder, can you provide any more feedback on how you're coming up with 24 traffic trips with this many units? I mean, it's not a large number of units, but when you take into account the number of bedrooms, you're talking, 150 or so potential residents in the building. So how are you going to accommodate, how do you calculate 24 trips, and how would you justify that number of parking spaces?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the way that the trip generation is done is based on a traffic manual for the land use category. So that is what arrives at based on the proposed development type, how many trips are expected to be generated by the proposed development. In terms of expanding on how they arrived at the 25 trips, it's based on the units proposed and the parking proposed. So that's the most amount of detail I can provide at this time, but we can certainly take it back to our consultant. And then I'll just add regarding the parking, there was a parking analysis done as part of the traffic impact brief as well. And based on the town of Oakville zoning bylaw requirements, I believe based on the unit sizes proposed, 81 parking spaces was the requirement. And I think we're showing 80 total is what I had mentioned.
Total of 80,
We're one short from the zoning bylaw requirement, but again, that would be addressed through the zoning bylaw amendment process in the future as well.
Yeah, this is a common refrain, particularly in the north, where there's not a lot of on-street parking, that parking supply is a significant concern, particularly visitors. I do want to point out that you are suggesting a 63% nodal split. So 63% of the trips will be generated through cars. So I'm very curious to see the math on how 63% of the trips, based on the number of potential residents, comes up to 24. So I'll be very curious to see that math and how that works. And one of the other concerns that came up is construction mitigation. Actually, we can probably leave that to the questions list, and that can come back in the next report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for recognizing that this isn't really an evening designed for debate with applicants, merely to identify issues. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And while the delegate's here, I think I'd just like to pull that thread a little bit on the parking issue, because we have almost weekly applicants and developers willing to spend millions of dollars saying that people who are going to live here don't need a parking spot. Like and we have, and this is writ large across Ontario, saying 0 parking minimums now. So can you maybe tell me why and where that is, and why it might be different from 20 years ago, and where your client is willing to put up 50, 60, 70, 80, $100 million because they believe that people want to move in there and don't need a parking spot? Can you maybe enlighten us a little bit more about that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I don't know if I can speak to the evolution of parking needs comprehensively as a planning consultant, but what I will say is, as it relates specifically to this application, we're showing what is required through the zoning bylaw, but again, I mentioned that our client is still undecided on the type of use even that's going to be on the site. So what we wanted to show through the plans provided is that the site, through the one level of underground parking, can support that many spaces, but should they proceed with a retirement residence or a student residence or any other option, the parking needs will change. So that would be addressed through the future zoning bylaw amendment process. So that's all I can really say. In terms of speaking to the full evolution of parking needs, I don't think I can speak to that in terms of this application.
So then, okay, then I'll just pull that back to your site specific then. So if they're not sure what's gonna happen, and you've mentioned it might be a senior's place, which would mean less parking spots, are they also open to the potential, if it doesn't become that they could increase the parking spots if that's what the market demands at the time?
Through the mayor to the councillor, certainly the market needs of the proposal is heavily considered as part of the application. So our client will be weighing all of their options and considering based on the site area and what is financially feasible to build underground, what is appropriate for the site as well.
And can you tell me roughly what it costs to build one parking spot underground?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I do not have that stat. I apologize.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. It's for staff, not for the applicant, so thank you. Basically, from looking at this traffic study, it looks like they're using data from 2016. Am I incorrect in that assumption? I ask only because I have a computer from 2016 that's considered garbage, and 2016 seems to be a long time.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when we go through these applications, we provide a terms of reference to the applicant. So what we'll use is whatever the most current data is. We do the current data based on traffic counts, depending on where they are. They get refreshed every few years. So if the most recent data that we have is 2016, that's often what's provided to the applicant.
Okay. Could we have a look at finding a way of updating the data somehow, if possible? Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Just one other that we always seem to circle around, but it's not on the list, which is there a percentage of the units that would be required to be affordable, or would the applicant be willing to have the reduced market pricing on?
Through the mayor to the councilor, was that question directed to staff?
Well, I wanted it on the issues list, but if you'd like to answer, that would be great.
Through the mayor to the councilor, there hasn't been any comments received from staff as part of the first submission requiring a minimum amount of affordable units or larger units yet at this time.
Ms. McCrory, thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your good answers to all the questions. Before I call for a motion to receive and before I ask the planning director to detail any added issues that they caught, I'd like to ask, for me the big issue is why would we change from low density to high density when the core policy in our official plan, as I understand it anyway, is that we direct growth, we direct density and intensification to our GO station areas and our strategic growth areas and our transit corridors, and this isn't any of those. So I just wonder why we're making that leap here. That strikes me as the fundamental issue with this application. Could I get a motion to, oh no, before I do that, can I get the staff to detail the caught issues?
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the issues raised in the original report, the future recommendation report, staff will also provide analysis of the following matters. Consider an increase in amount of bike parking spaces. Look at the overall parking ratio. Examine architecture, specifically the entrance on 6th Line and along the walkway to the school. Working with the school board comments and any issues raised by the school board, such as the RS report. And that would also address the tree preservation. Is the land use, built form, and density appropriate? What elements of a complete community does this proposal address? Look at unit mix and determine if more multi-bedroom units are needed. Consider sensitive rooftop design. How will the proposed development influence the town's housing pledge? Site plan design and layout to consider such matters as waste management, traffic, site access, and functionality to capture the residents' issues. Report will also address what makes a complete community. Construction mitigation, such as dust. Consideration of whether affordable units will be required. And why would we change this property designation from high-density residential to low-density residential? Sorry, from low-density residential to high-density residential. My mistake.
Thank you. And maybe for everybody's benefit, could the report make clear, we keep hearing this belief that we can require affordable units, and I'm not sure that's actually the case. So maybe another issue to add might be, are there any ways to acquire a certain number of affordable units here? What are our opportunities to acquire or to achieve affordable units? That would be something to look at. And I guess the final issue would be, is it appropriate to do this in baby steps here, where first we do the official plan amendment and only later do we do the zoning and only later do we do the site plan? Do we need, considering the change from low density to high density, which is the biggest change you can make, I suggest, in terms of designations, is it really good planning to do that without seeing the zoning application? You know, in the name of comprehensive planning or whatever. All right, Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if, I heard the applicant state that they were never they weren't requested to provide a traffic study. They've provided the transportation brief, which I guess is not quite as comprehensive as a full transportation study. The single largest concern that we are hearing from our community is the traffic and the impacts on 6th Line. And I'm wondering, is it appropriate or possible to request that the applicants submit a fulsome traffic analysis to justify their conclusions on the traffic?
Mr. Charles?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can certainly take that back, Councillor, and have that discussion with the applicant and just see what other augmentations perhaps we need to make to the study just to cover off those issues.
And this, at the same time, and I know it's on the list, but if we could have, when we're looking at the parking issue, I'm curious as to how that calculation is impacted by the fact if you just take one person per bedroom, that's 102 people in the building. That doesn't include multiple people in the bedroom. So I'm very concerned about the number of parking spaces for 102 people, potentially, if not more. So when you're looking at that parking, if you could take that into consideration as well and juxtapose that against our requirements.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll take that back. Thank you.
And I'd be prepared to give you a motion to receive at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Let's see what Councillor Elgar wants to add.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I thought I heard about increased bicycle spaces, but I didn't hear increased parking spaces on the list. Did you read that out to me?
Through the chair to the councillor, I did say look at overall parking ratio, whether sufficient resident and visitor parking spaces.
Okay.
So that is captured.
Good. Now, one other thing, sight lines. The one resident said that it would be blocking the sunlight. Is that part of your list? Did I hear that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that would be part of the site plan considerations.
It's part of the site plan. That will come back then. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, Council, we have a motion from Councillor Knoll to receive all that we have heard and recommend it all for consideration by staff. Is there any objection to Councillor Knoll's motion? Councillor Elgar, are you objecting? Okay. There are no objections, and it carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. And now we turn to public meeting report for an official plan amendment at 3064 on behalf of 3064 Trafalgar Partnership. We have a delegation in the person of Catherine McEwen, who is appearing in person on behalf of the applicant. And as before, this is the planning meeting where we collect issues for staff to take away and consider informing their recommendation to us. And if Catherine McEwen is present and ready, we're ready to hear from her.
Mr. Mayor, Catherine has decided to appear virtually.
Oh, all right. Well, virtually will do.
We've got a bit of a stomach bug going on.
Well, we look forward to you sharing your information.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Catherine McEwen from Corsiac Urban Planning, here on behalf of 3064 Trafalgar Partnership. As indicated previously, the contact information is provided below if anyone wishes to call in. Happy to do so. Next slide, please. The subject lands are identified in red and are municipally known as 3060 and 3068 Trafalgar Road, which were previously 3064 Trafalgar Road. The subject lands are located north of Dundas Street on the west side of Trafalgar Road. They're surrounded by the NHS to the west and the north. Site-specific zoning was approved in 2019 for 2 30-story apartment buildings. A site plan application was made in 2021, which is now very advanced and in review. There's a concurrent application to remove the holding provision, the H49. Areas along Trafalgar Road are currently proposed for development by others for 15 to 30 stories. Next slide, please. The concept plan has the same footprint and as the initial proposal, which was for the 30-story buildings with 2 residential towers and a connecting podium. This concept has been refined through the site plan process, which is still active. The first submission for site plan was December 2021, and the third submission was July 2023. Next slide, please. The proposed official plan amendment is to increase the approved height by 3 stories from 30 to 33 stories, with an additional level of underground parking for an increase of 60 units for a total of 782 units and 6 levels of underground parking. There are no changes to the building footprints. Next slide, please. The property is within the Trafalgar Urban Core primary regional node. The Trafalgar Road is currently undergoing significant infrastructure improvements, including widening from 4 to 6 lanes from Dundas Street to the 407, which will include multi-use trails on both sides. Trafalgar Road is planned for the frequent regional express bus, priority bus route, with a future regional bus rapid transit. And there's a potential for HOV lane or BRT lane that might be provided to encourage the use of transit and active transportation. The regional official plan designates the area within the higher order transit corridor. Next slide, please. The subject lands are currently designated Trafalgar Urban Core area in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. Policies permit high-density residential uses up to 30 stories along major arterial roads and transit corridors. Trafalgar Road is a designated higher order transit corridor. A small portion of the site, the bottom kind of left corner, is designated NHS, which will eventually be conveyed to the town. Next slide, please. The subject lands are currently zoned Trafalgar Urban Core Site-Specific 95 with holding provision 49. The maximum permitted height is 30 stories, and there is no restrictions to density or FSI. Through discussions with town staff, the increase in height of 3 stories may be accommodated through a future minor variance application after an approval of the official plan amendment due to the existing section 37 agreement. Next slide, please. In an attempt to address climate change, there will be energy saving measures included in the proposed building, as well as the site borders the NHS to the west and is included within the lands identified as part of the 120-meter linkage preserve area, which includes green space at the southwest corner of the site that makes up a small portion of the linkage preserve area that was dedicated to the town. Next slide, please. These figures illustrate that shadows move from the north to the east, so there'll be no impact on existing low-density residential areas. Next slide, please. In December of last year, a public information meeting was held virtually. Notices were mailed to over 350 addresses within 240 meters of the subject lands. And the notice was also posted on the town's website. There was 8 participants that attended, one of which included the town's planner. A summary of the cons included reasoning for intensification in this location, traffic, shadows, and availability of submission materials. Next slide, please. Just to conclude, we're requesting an official plan amendment to increase the permitted height from 30 to 33 stories. The policies, including provincial, regional, and local for Trafalgar Urban Core, designate this area to accommodate the greatest heights and density in the town of Oakville. The additional 60 units will help to make the development more feasible and will contribute to the town's housing pledge. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and our contact information as well as Mr. Hassan's are provided on this slide.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. You have a few. Let's start with the ward councillor, Councillor Navnanda.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Through you, just a question about, there's several buildings that have been developed in the last little while in that area. Why do you require the extra 3 stories when you've gotten to the site plan of having the maximum stories?
So in order to make the most efficient use of the land, and I think we all know that we're in a time of a housing crisis, to make the most efficient use of the underground parking that's proposed, that's the reason.
But for the developers, they wouldn't see 30 stories as sufficient?
The additional 60 units helps to maximize the development of the site.
Is there a concern that you or they will not be able to develop without having?
Well, through you, due to the downward shift in the condo market over the last year, along with rising building costs and higher interest rates, we're requesting the additional units to assist with the feasibility of the development.
What about affordability of the actual units?
I think that question always comes back, and I don't think any of us know how to answer it, because what is affordable in Oakville?
Okay, so this is more towards actually developing rather than...
Yes, and to maximize the development, like to make the most efficient use of land, which comes from the provincial policy that we adhere to.
Okay, so I think I would just say to the staff that we would look at one of the most important things is affordability. In terms of feasibility, that's one thing, but we would be looking at affordability as well, and based on other developments within the area, because 30 stories is the maximum in the area. So maybe looking at if affordability is even viable here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. I'm glad Councillor Nanda raised that, because I share that concern, the additional 3 stories. And through you to the delegate, I'm just wondering, can you point me to a planning site within Oakville where district has not gone above the existing height limit?
I can't do that because I haven't worked with district, so I'm not familiar in the past.
Okay, thank you.
But I'd be happy to get that information for you.
That would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Just back to the housing crisis, just a question. How many of your units are going to be affordable housing in this 33-story, 782-unit facility?
I think that comes back to what is affordable housing.
Okay. And what is affordable housing?
Councillor, can I just ask you to, I mean, it feels like we're not really identifying an issue for the staff, but trying to have a debate with the applicant?
Well, I was trying to figure out, are we asking for affordable housing when units are proposed at all? And from what I'm hearing...
We're trying to, through you, Your Worship, I think we're trying to convey a number of units, different unit sizes, and the smaller unit sizes obviously are more affordable, and that's your affordable units.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I realize we have got a huge vacuum everywhere in Ontario, and especially here in Oakville right now, where I think going forward, we as a council should ask direct staff to come back with numbers of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units of what is truly affordable based on net income of a household. And I think people would be shocked if they knew that we're spinning our wheels here, calling it affordable, and honestly, it won't be affordable. I think this is what the poor lady's trying to tell us, is that they need more units because the costs have gone up and their interest carrying costs have gone up. And
So, Councillor, you'd like to add to the issues list how much affordable housing we can achieve in this as a result of this change that they're seeking?
No, I think my question is more general, Mayor, and I think we as a council should request staff to come up with a number to say, net income of this family household has to be, boom, in order to qualify to purchase a condo, if you have to put so many % down, and what the carrying costs, estimated carrying costs are per month.
Would you?
I think, and this isn't specific to this one development, I would agree, but too often at council, we got young people coming out and trying to say they want affordable housing, and I feel so sorry for them, because they got to understand it is not affordable housing anymore the way the province has changed the calculations. And we have to stand up and start pointing that out of what is going on right now.
Well, thank you, Councillor, for
Thank
taking
you.
this opportunity to point that out again. And let's see if Councillor Hazlet-Thiel would like to add an issue or point something out. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. So there is, under the matters under review, it says consideration of public and community benefits as part of Section 37 bonusing agreement. So could we just get some clarity on what you are going to be looking at there? This is an application that I take it the Section 37 is still valid. So
I believe that's correct, and that'll be evaluated as the application proceeds.
So Director Charles, could you just confirm that for us? And what would be the quantum that potentially would be achieved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. When the application was approved, it had a zoning bylaw with it, and that was approved before the Planning Act was changed and it removed the opportunity to use bonusing. As a result of that, the applicant was able to enter into a Section 37 agreement with the town, which had a value to it, the value of which isn't coming to mind right now. That was written a little while ago. So that is still valid. If in the fullness of time council wants to approve this project, we would be looking at the delta in between what was approved and what was previously approved and what may get approved, and that would be taken through a CBC, so through the community benefit charge.
So thank you for that clarification. My other questions are, go back to what Mayor Burton was saying. If in fact a new precedent gets set of 3 more levels of housing on the property, how many units would the applicant be prepared to make affordable based on the income, the provincial income statement of affordability?
I would have to get back to you with that information. I can't give you that offhand.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of this is for the director. Can you put on the issue list what is the impact this would have on already approved applications along the Trafalgar corridor that have respected the 30 unit height? Sorry, the height of 30. Can you add that? Okay, thank you. And finally, I'm in the report that comes back, could you just clarify the statement that was made about a possible future minor variance if this is agreed to? That's a little bit unsettling, and I think we would like to understand that in more detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. Two questions. My first question is this the most appropriate location for this additional height and density in Oakville? Are there other locations that would be more appropriate? And I guess that's an issue for our staff to come back with. I know there's an issues list there already, but I don't see that particular issue being discussed specifically. The second is, does this new height create a precedent for other sites in the area or other parts of Oakville, including our major transit station areas?
I don't believe so. I think the 3 stories, like, if you're looking at the building, it's you wouldn't notice it. It's to make most efficient use of the land. We're providing the parking that's required under the approved zoning bylaw, which is 1 space per unit plus 0.15 for visitors. So I don't believe so.
All righty. Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Ms. McEwen. Staff, would you like to let us know what you caught for the issues list?
Yep, through you, Mayor Burton. Further to the matters to be addressed outlined in the staff report, I've noted the following additional items. Details on the request for an additional 3 stories when the development has already been approved for 30 stories. Report back on the affordability of the units related to the feasibility of the development. Report on district's other developments throughout the town. How many units will be affordable. Report on the amount of bonusing money that would be required if approved. What the impact would be on already approved applications in the area. Report back on the future minor variance process. Report back on if this is the most appropriate location for height and density. And then finally, does this new height create any precedent for height in major transit station areas or other areas surrounding this property?
Council, does that capture what you wanted? Then let's have a motion. Councillor Nanda, thank you very much. Any objection? There being none, Councillor Nanda, your motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is the recommendation report, the first of 3. And this recommendation report is the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for Rampin Holdings at 1086 Burnham Thorpe Road East. And Brandon Hassan is our staff member, and you have the staff's report and the recommendation in the agenda, and he has a presentation if you need any reminders of where we've been on this. Councillor Adams.
I appreciate the report and all the materials. I also appreciate the opportunity to have spoken with staff previously about the issues surrounding this location. I understand there may be somebody watching online, so I wondered if we could see the presentation.
We certainly can. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of committee, and members of the public tuning into tonight's meeting. This presentation is in relation to item 7.1 on tonight's agenda. These zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications relate to the proposed development of the Rampin Holden Inc.'s lands located at 1086 Burnham Thorpe Road East. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide the staff analysis of the applications and provide recommendations to council in order for a decision to be made. Next slide, please. As seen on the location and air photo maps, the subject lands are located north of Dundas Street East, south of Burnham Thorpe Road, east of Trafalgar Road, and west of 9th Line. Next slide, please. On the left side of the screen is the proposed draft plan of subdivision, which contains 132 detached dwellings, 52 townhouse units, the remainder of a village square and natural heritage system. For those that are not familiar with the property, the composite plan on the right side of the screen depicts the surrounding subdivisions, being Great Gulf to the south, Mattamy to the east, and the Capobianco lands to the west. Next slide, please. As seen on the screen, the subject lands are outlined in red on the North Oakville master plan map. It's a little bit off for some reason, but next slide, please. The subject lands are designated neighborhood area and natural heritage system in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. and are classified in more detail within the master plan as natural heritage system, village square, general urban and suburban area. Next slide, please. In regards to the zoning bylaw 2009-189, the subject lands are currently zoned future development special provision 16. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment application would rezone the property to various residential zones, natural heritage and park zones. Next slide, please. Further to the previous slide, which depicted the proposed zoning, the same Schedule A to bylaw 2024-090 is shown on the left, and the related draft plan of subdivision is shown on the right, noting that the entire plan is subject to a holding provision for future allocation to be determined by Halton Region, and street frontage, including access from the Mattamy lands to the east. Next slide, please. As seen in the master plan and draft plan, the applicant has submitted a park facility fit plan for the village square, which combined with the Mattamy block to the east will be approximately 0.33 hectares. Again, which the other half is to the east on the Mattamy Joshua Creek Phase 3 lands. Once the blocks have been conveyed to the town, Parks and Open Space staff will complete a detailed design of the park through a tendering process with the developers. Construction will be awarded to the lowest compliant bidder, and the amenities to be installed will be vetted and approved by town staff. Financial responsibilities will be outlined in the subdivision agreement and coordinated with the timing of capital budget funding. Next page. Through a review of the ERFSS documents, the medium constraint stream will not be relocated into the optional linkage preserve area, which is shown with the 2 stars on the central secondary plan map. As such, the lands identified on the NOE 3 map is the optional linkage preserve area and is proposed as part of the development to be consistent with the abutting residential land use designations. This work is an extension of the Mattamy subdivision to the east, which does not contain the optional linkage, rather maintains the medium and high constraint linkages, which is the top star on the center of the map. Next slide, please. One of the items that was brought up at the statutory public meeting in 2023 was protecting for and maintaining the north-south road connection bringing Street A on the draft plan. As seen on the screen, I've illustrated the subject lands outlined in red on the master plan, and the north-south road with an aqua-colored dotted line, and similarly with a red dotted line through the draft plan of subdivision. Next slide, please. Again, one of the items that was brought up at the public meeting was protecting and maintaining the east-west road connection, being Street C on the draft plan. And again, as seen on the screen, I've illustrated the subject lands outlined in red in the master plan, and the east-west road with an aqua-colored dotted line, and similarly with a red dotted line through the draft plan of subdivision. Next slide. Together, both of the road connections have been protected and secured for coordination with the surrounding subdivisions as part of the master plan. Next slide, please. Further to the matters of interest I've just reviewed, the staff report details the matters to be addressed, which staff have completed a review and analysis for, as shown with the check marks on the screen. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff put forth the following recommendations as shown for councilors' consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Councillor Adams, you asked for the presentation. Anything to follow?
No, I have nothing to add to that. I'm not sure if there's a individual in the delegation list for this item or not, but.
Madam Clerk, do we have a delegation?
Rob Russell is here if there are questions of him.
Mr. Russell is an agent appearing on behalf of Rampant Holdings, Inc. Are there questions for Mr. Russell? Councillor Giddings.
Thank you very much for coming out. Don't know whether this is best served by you or by staff. I'm just curious about the optional natural heritage system linkage, how that came about and the alternative that's not being used, I guess.
Councillor, maybe that is for staff.
Yeah.
Councillor O'Meara, do you have anything for Mr. Russell? Mr. Russell, I called you up prematurely.
That's all right.
Please be comfortable. Mr. Hassan,
Through
our,
Mr.
our
Mayor,
questions are for you.
if we can have the presentation pulled back up, the mapping best illustrates, we'll have to go back a couple slides. Yep, so All of the plans shown on the right side of the screen are from the official plan itself, and all of the little red circles identify where the optional linkage is identified in the mapping. And again, without going through the super technical and environmental study details, the Mattamy development identified I guess we'll just say where the yellow stars are being the linkage that's going to be utilized through this area of North Oakville, and the optional linkage will not be required to continue that environmental feature.
Can you just explain, have you labeled the optional linkage? Can you make it, can you read this more plainly for those of us who are confused by your map?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so it'd be the center map being the secondary plan. The little red bullseye right in the middle where the red dotted lines are coming up, that's the optional linkage. So just north of that where that yellow star is, that's the linkage that will be maintained.
Okay,
and then further to the right is again, the yellow star that is the same on the composite plan, which is on the left side, and that is the NHS linkage that is being maintained by Mattamy, and then further to this project as well.
And then I believe the councillor is expressing interest in understanding the term optional linkage. What makes it an optional linkage? Could you just delve into more of the detail of the background of that?
So through Mr. Mayor, again, there was a lot of studies that were done as far as the EIS and work for the Mattamy project, and that work was pulled into this, and it was determined that, again, the constraints that were found in the NHS system in the optional area weren't required. So we are maintaining let's say it's kind of swooping north across this property on the top of the property into the Mattamy land. So again, it's just the environmental work that was done to determine that the optional linkage wasn't been required.
So is there a policy in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan that the boundaries and so on and locations of the linkages are to be determined by the science on the ground on an application-by-application basis?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. That's why I've included all of the schedules on the right side of the screen identifying where those lands are identified to be an optional linkage. And if it's determined that they're not required, then it would default to the surrounding land use designations, being the residential category.
I thank you for going into that detail. We created the NHS so long ago that I'm not sure everybody remembers all the little details that we went through to create that. Councillor Giddings?
Mr. Mayor, through you, so part of the consideration would have been that the area to the east or to the west would provide for continuity. So this would be the connector piece. So the decision is a result of a number of previous studies that have directed this to remain in place.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And the Capobianco lands that are shown, and let's just take a look at the left side image being the composite plan. They're not shown having a development scheme at this point because they are going through works and studies to realign the NHS system that's on their property. And again, that's all part of the Joshua Creek floodplain area special policy that allows them to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings, for the chance to have that explicated. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to staff, you really piqued my ears with the term lowest compliant bidder, and I'm not familiar with that term. I was always familiar with the two envelope where you take the best and then you find out which is the cheapest. So can you just explain to me what lowest compliant bidder is? I believe that was for the park structure in there, or I apologize.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if we have park staff on the line, but I did receive those comments from them as far as the park facility fit plan details go.
Councillor, I imagine that question could be answered offline, actually.
Okay, well, if that is it, and if we want to change it, and we're going to pass a recommendation tonight, and maybe it shouldn't be the lowest compliant bidder, maybe it should be the best of the two envelope package that I'm more familiar with, then I hope we're certainly not spiraling towards some rusty cheap metal that shows up in 10 years because it was the lowest compliant bidder. So I'll leave it there with you then, Your Worship, but I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case. Thank you.
Well, we'll get more information for you from the CAO. But just before she helps, Mr. Hassan, is there any language in the actual draft plan of subdivision or the zoning bylaw amendment that says that it'll be the lowest compliant bidder? Or was that a remark that was contributed to you by the park staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, the latter would be correct.
So, Councillor Mayor, that's why I thought that it's not urgent, or at any rate, it doesn't bear on what's in front of us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Madam CAO.
We can certainly provide more details through the Parks Department, but generally there are two processes to the bidding process. There is the two envelope option. More complicated proposals follow that process. But when you have a proposal that clearly defines what you're looking for, and there's not a lot of discretion in that requirement, then you can deal with the lowest bid that comes in on that because you've well described the project ahead of time. So we can provide a memo, particularly on our tendering process, that sets out those requirements, if that would be helpful for council.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Through you to staff, just a question regarding the NHS. Can you confirm that there is no dead ending of the NHS through the east-west linkage across North Oakville?
Through you, Mayor Burton, if we can pull up the master plan map, it might be slide 3. All of the NHS throughout North Oakville would be interconnected, and again, that's why we're trying to maintain the north swath through this project here, just to connect it.
You flip one back one and saw NHS more complete than this little bit here. So I look at this NHS right now. I'm looking for connections, and I don't see it on here anymore.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, for some reason, my subject lands slid off of where the actual subject lands are, but the Capo Bianco lands to the west of this property would provide the linkage on the west side of the property, and it would connect further to the west. Unfortunately, I
See, that
can't.
was my problem when they flashed through. I thought something's going wrong here, and now that really confirms. If that isn't, this map then is not accurate at all then. Is that correct?
Well, no, through Mr. Mayor, the master plan is correct, subject to some changes as development applications are processed, but for some reason my subject lands outline is not correct. It's further right and then south. It's off of it.
Something does not look right, because right now I see not an interconnected NHS system at all, which was what we planned back in the early 2000s, which everybody agreed to. It looks like now we have islands everywhere.
Maybe you want to go to this, go forward one slide, please.
Yeah,
And,
that does it a little bit better.
Doesn't look any better to me because it's not there anymore.
So, Councillor, Mr. Hassan has said that there's a linkage that runs up the left side of the black line on the left side of the black box. You see the NHS running up and then swooping over and coming through and going down.
So the wider area is blown out now, is it? It's planted with houses? Is that the plan?
Through Mr. Mayor, that would be correct. So
That is correct,
where the red dot is on the side, you can imagine that being gone, but the squiggly part, for lack of a better term, is still going to be maintained.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All right.
Sure doing a good job, aren't we?
Councillor Elgar, anything else?
No, I'll put my hand down. I see where we're going with everything right now. It's pretty sad.
All right, Councillor. Council, you have before you the report and the answers to your questions. Is there a motion? Councillor Adams.
I'll give you the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there an objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, that carries. Thank you, everybody. We now come to the recommendation report and draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment from Spruce Rose at 304 and 318 Spruce Street. And Council, I would like to ask you to enjoy the presentation on this file and to meet Muziab Riaz, who I hope and pray I pronounced his name in the general vicinity of correct. Thank you. Mr. Riaz can be more fulsomely introduced by Director Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I realize I was completely remiss in not introducing Delia previously, and Ms. McPhail has been with us for about a year now, and Musaib's been with us for a few more than that, a planner who joined us a little while ago from Haldeman, Norfolk, if I remember correctly. So he's now one of our planners and had carriage of this file. You met him very briefly when we brought forward the staff public meeting. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Director, and Mr. Riaz, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, and members of council. A draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications have been submitted by Melrose Investment, Inc. on behalf of their client, Spruce Rose, Inc. The proposal relates to the development of lands for 7 detached dwellings. The report can be found as item 7.2 of tonight's agenda. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide a recommendation to council and for council to make a decision on the applications. The applicant held a virtual public information meeting on September 19th, 2023, and a statutory public meeting was held on May 21st, 2024. Prior to this meeting, staff received 7 letters of objection. The property is municipally known as 304 and 318 Spruce Street, situated at the southeast corner of Spruce Street and Reynolds Street. The site is located immediately east of the Trafalgar Road Heritage Conservation District. There are also other properties of cultural heritage value immediately to the north, east, and south of the subject lands. The site is north of the former Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital site, which is now home to the Oakville Trafalgar Community Center and is approved for a future residential development along McDonald Road and Ellen Street. The subject lands contain a church with a fenced kids' play area, 2 sheds, and associated surface parking, as well as 2-story detached dwelling and a detached garage. The applicant proposes to create 7 detached dwelling lots to accommodate 7 2-story detached dwellings, with 3 dwellings fronting Reynolds Street and 4 fronting Spruce Street. The dwellings have individual driveway accesses along Spruce Street and Reynolds Street. The site currently consists of a sidewalk along both Spruce Street and Reynolds Street, which will be maintained. The applicant's proposed detached dwelling will accommodate 2 vehicle parking within an attached garage and 2 parking spaces on the driveway. The proposed dwellings have attached 2-car garages with front porch entry feature. The dwellings range in lot coverage from 30.5% to 43.9%. The dwellings also range in height from 9.96 meters to 10.63 meters and have interior side yard setbacks of 1.2 meters for all lots except eastern side yard setback for lot 7 and southern side yard setback for lot 1. The lands are designated low-density residential. While the proposed development is appropriate in terms of housing type of detached dwelling for the subject site, the proposed built form is incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of massing, scale, height that negatively impacts the character of the neighborhood. It is staff's opinion that the applicant has not sufficiently demonstrated how the proposed rezoning to an RL5 zone with site-specific provisions implement the official plan policies. On this basis, staff recommends refusal of the applications as submitted. The property is zoned community use, which permits uses such as place of worship, art gallery, daycare, public school, and emergency shelter, etc. The properties to the north, east, and south are zoned as residential low 3-0 with special provision 10, while the properties to the west are zoned as residential low 5-0. The zones with 0 suffix are subject to additional requirements for residential floor area, lot coverage, height, etc. The lands subject to special provision 10 are subject to additional regulations for lot coverage, lot depth, garage floor area, and interior side yards. The applicant is proposing low residential 5 zone with site-specific provisions for maximum lot coverage, minimum front yard, and maximum lot coverage and minimum front yard. As detailed earlier, the applicant has not demonstrated how the proposed zoning bylaw amendment implement the applicable policies of the official plan. On this basis, staff recommend refusal of the applications as submitted. The applicant requests approval of a draft plan of subdivision which includes 7 lots for detached dwellings and 1 block for daylight triangle at the southeast corner of Spruce Street and Reynolds Street intersection. There is an existing access easement at the rear of the proposed lots 4 and 5 in favor of 311 and 313 McDonald Road, located south of the subject lands. As detailed in the staff report, it is staff's opinion that lots 1 to 3 within the draft plan of subdivision does not align with the configuration of the adjacent lots to the south facing Reynolds Street and therefore do not reflect appropriate development. As detailed in the staff report, the development as proposed is not compatible with the adjacent and surrounding properties in terms of scale, height, massing, architectural character, setbacks, and separation distances. It poses a risk of undermining the existing built form character of the neighborhood by introducing height, scale, and massing that is not found in the surrounding cultural heritage resources and the adjacent Trafalgar Road Heritage Conservation District. The proposed development is with increased lot coverages and heights as well as reduced front yards from those permitted within the adjacent and surrounding zones would result in dwellings that are not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood character and add to the massing and scale of the proposed dwellings. The proposed lotting pattern of lots 1 to 3 with reduced frontage and increased depths would result in narrower and deeper dwellings that do not maintain the visual continuity of the streetscape as well as contribute to the loss of privacy and for adjacent dwellings to the south. The existing trees along Spruce Street and Reynolds Street form part of the neighborhood character. The removal of 11 trees, including 2 municipal street trees, 2 private trees along Spruce Street, and 4 private trees along Reynolds Street may permanently alter the neighborhood character. In conclusion, staff put forward the following recommendation as shown for council's consideration. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riaz. I wanted you to give the presentation because we had quite a number, we had quite amount of public interest in the matter when it was before us for the public meeting issues identification session. And I'm sure they might be watching and they might appreciate the chance to hear all of that. Councillor Giddings and then Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, that last slide where you detailed the loss of mature trees on Spruce and Reynolds. Love to see that there. Thank you for including that. The staff recommendation, fully supportive of it. You started one of the recommendations as staff is of the opinion that the detached dwelling land use is appropriate for the subject site. So what is appropriate is to have the community use changed to allow for housing, but the RL5 designation is simply too much.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the staff is of the opinion that the land use itself with detached dwellings is appropriate, but the intensification in terms of the built form is what's not appropriate.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you very much for the recommendation report and the details that you shared and for listening to the community that knows their neighborhood very well. And I'd be pleased to move this the staff's recommendation, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, it's duly moved by Councillor Hazard-Thiel. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Thank you, Councillor Hazard-Thiel. Council, at a request, I'm going to suggest that we move item 7.3 to after we come out of confidential discussion items 8.1 and 8.2. And before we go into the confidential session, I wonder if someone would like to move the receipt of the minutes of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee. Councillor Giddings, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. I now need a motion for that we resolve into a session closed to the public for the purpose of considering items 8.1 and 8.2 under section 239, sub 2 of the Municipal Act, because they deal with litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Who would like to offer that motion? Councillor Elgar, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Council, we'll have a brief bio break while the technical team arranges the meeting for a session closed to the public. All right, Council has now...
Recording in progress.
Council is now resuming its public session, having met in a session closed to the public to consider confidential items 8.1 and 8.2, which we were entitled to do under section 239 sub 2 of the Municipal Act because they dealt with litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or the local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. While in camera, Council gave instructions to legal staff on how to proceed on those two matters. And that brings us to an opportunity to solicit a motion to rise and report to Council.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if we could just have the public recommendations approved from closed session?
So what I said is not sufficient?
Well, those are the
Well, I'm seeing no contrary advice from legal, so both were moved by Councillor Duddick. The first was that staff be authorized to proceed in the appeals filed by Palermo Village Corporation and Enerux Dundas 3015 Inc. in accordance with the report from the legal department dated July 2nd, 2024, and that staff be authorized to proceed in accordance with the recommendations of the report from the legal department dated July 2nd, 2024 in respect of 8.2. Okay? All right. Councilor Hazlitt deal.
Mayor Burton, are we going to 7.3 now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, appreciate that. If we give our attention now to the CAO, Ms. Jane Closey will give us some introductory remarks.
Mayor and members of council, as you are aware, the province of Ontario, through the Ministry of Infrastructure, has a transit-oriented community program. It is intended to build those mixed-use communities that bring housing, affordable housing, jobs, within a short distance to a transit system. That TOC, I'll refer to, has been in place for a short period of time. And while typically it's been focused on subway locations in Toronto, they did in May, of course, announce to us that they were considering the potential TOC project in Oakville to be explored. So in hearing that, back at the meeting on June 3rd, Council actually had given staff the authorization to engage in discussions on a potential transit-oriented community and report back to Council. So you have in front of you tonight a report back on any further information, not a lot, that we have on the TOC process. The letter that we did receive in May from the province was not specific to Midtown. It was very general, but we do understand that the ministry is looking at the area around the Midtown GO station to consider a potential TOC program. So we did have an initial orientation meeting with the town staff, the region, as well as the ministry officials very recently. Sorry, I've lost my place, just a minute. As indicated in the ministry's letter, the province, the municipality, and the region are required to enter into a confidentiality agreement. So that is a requirement of the overall program. So all the material that's shared regarding the TOC program and discussions with the province are of a confidential nature. But we as staff will provide as much as possible to council that we are able to outside of that process, but certainly in compliance with the requirements from the province. So at this time, as I indicated, that the TOC program is seeking technical input from the region and the town through the purpose of a working group that they have identified. In addition, the province has established a type of steering committee just to coordinate that technical input that they're seeking in the short while. The province will be looking for council's input into this program. They have made that clear, and it's certainly been clear in other TOC programs that have been undertaken in Toronto and other areas. They also look for the public engagement. We understand that the public engagement should happen sometime in the fall, was the information that we have received. So while the information shared at the meetings is confidential at this time, staff will be inquiring about our opportunities to update the public on a regular basis. Town staff will be reiterating to the ministry that creating a vibrant, livable, and complete community oriented around transit has always been the requirement of this council for Midtown. Ministry staff will be informed on many of the comments that we've heard from the public. We had the several sessions of the Committee of the Whole meeting, as well as public consultation on Midtown, as well as applications within the area. So their comments are certainly going to be provided to the province as we work through the process with them. Planning Midtown as a complete community is an essential piece in I know this council's position. The ongoing challenge will be is if we're only working on a portion of Midtown, how do we make sure that those portions stay in context to the overall? So that is certainly a jeopardy that we don't want to end up at the end of this process. And we will be informing the ministry of those concerns that we would have. So the ministry's letter that was received way back in May, well, not that far back, but in May, they had indicated that the process is rooted in the principles of good planning and involves a careful study of existing and emerging contexts of the area, and that they will be using those principles throughout their process. So there will be meetings with town staff and regional staff over the summer. We will, on an ongoing basis, update council and to what extent we can the public on the TOC process. And that actually concludes my opening remarks on the process that's in front of us and a short update on where we are at this point in time.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Could you just clarify if there will be any wall of confidentiality between staff and council?
No, the confidentiality, the agreement, my apologies, I'm stumbling here. No, there's no wall between council and staff.
And will staff be allowed to, and if so, will you be regularly updating council?
Yes, as soon as we have new information for council, we will be, and we'll be and certainly ensuring that any information for the public will be providing that update.
Thank you. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Madam CAO, in the report before us, it talks about the area around the Oakville GO station is being considered. Just for clarity, is that all of the lands? Is it individual private properties that may be up for development? Does it include the parking lots that are owned by Metrolinx?
I actually can't provide any more clarity on that. We'd have to seek that clarity from the province. So I don't have any finer definition of the area that's being considered as a potential TOC.
All right, and the region's involvement with the changes in planning, that will be for services, whether it be water, wastewater, other.
Water, wastewater would be the areas, as well as transportation. So those would be the services that the region would be providing input into.
All right, and the timing is pretty tight on this one. Will the province be making use of the town's resources in terms of making the public aware?
No, the public engagement process is entirely, as I understand, driven by the province, so they will be reaching out to the public if they feel is an appropriate time to get input directly from the public.
And we'd be happy to make our assets in our community centers and this facility available for them?
Yes, to provide the most amount of information to the public in close proximity would certainly, we will be doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazlett-Thiel.
Thank you, CAO Closey, for the detail. Further to the mayor's question about a wall, so just for clarity, the wall that exists is between council and the public at this time because we're duty-bound to a confidentiality agreement. Is that correct?
That would, yes.
Okay, thank you. I've also just wanted, we had a fulsome discussion about on June 3rd, and there was a series of issues and opportunities of things to be investigated. I'm wondering, I see Director Charles is here, if he could give us an update on the status of your progress on some of those identified concerns for June 3rd. Or from June 3rd, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Those are still issues that we're working through. We're still looking into those, investigating those, doing further analysis on the matters that were raised. We're not at a position at this point yet to come back to council. We would like to be able to come back to council in the fall if we're in a position at that point to bring a revised official plan amendment.
So just for my clarity and perhaps some others, we will continue to work through an OPA and some of the concerns that have been raised while this TOC process is in play.
That's correct.
Okay, and so the diligence around some of those issues that the public raised, they're in your hands and town staff's hands. They're not TOC.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Through you to staff, in the report, and maybe it was written before tonight, but it says these opportunities may include engagement with community stakeholder representatives, a public meeting, or an engagement platforms as determined by the ministry. So in the report, it states the word may. Now, is that that's out-of-date information? It's shall instead of may?
So the public consultation, the outreach to the public will occur. That's what we understood from the province, directed by the province. The types of engagements are not finalized yet. At least we don't understand what they are from the province at this point in time. But public engagement out to the public will occur.
Okay, so it shouldn't be may in page 4 of the 10-page report. The province has also wrote that an engagement process will be part of the TOC program, which will allow at least one opportunity for public input. These opportunities may include engagement.
Yeah, so
I'm just wondering if it's going to be a telling session or an engagement session, like.
The engagement process is really geared by the province. And it is, as I understand from discussions with them, a public consultation for the public to provide input.
Good. So I'll scratch the word may and put shall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe I could look for a motion to adopt the recommendation to receive the information and authorize the staff to execute any agreements necessary to secure external expertise. Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, that's carried. I hope I understood your, okay. All right. Then, for the benefit of the clerk and greater certainty, could I ask Councillor Giddings to move 9.1 again?
Certainly.
Thank you. Any objection? There being none, Madam Clerk, it's passed again. All right. Now, I think maybe we could do with a motion to rise and report. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole met and made recommendations on consent items 4.1 and 2, public meeting items 6.1, 2, and 3, discussion items 7.1, 2, and 3, confidential items 8.1 and 2, and advisory committee minutes 9.1. A mover and seconder for this report would be in order. Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the report is adopted. Is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to pass along the news that Bronte had its first farmers market, first of 8, run by our BIA and many supporters. We had a huge turnout beyond expectations, about 40 vendors or so. It will be going on every Sunday from 11 to 3 at Bronte Market Square for July and August. So we invite everybody to come join us.
Thank you very kindly.
Also, thanks to staff. They were instrumental in putting this together.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Council, tomorrow, if you're so inclined, you could wish happy 50th birthday to Councillor Adams. Milestone. All right. All right, thank you, everybody, for that moment of cheer. It would now be in order to have a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Sure. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Giddings, thank you. Is there any objection? There being none, the bylaws as listed in the agenda are considered read and passed. And that ends the work of this meeting. It's been terrific working with you. Thank you, everybody, for the work and the mirth. And that ends the meeting. Good night.